Hello and welcome to the show. Now, a little while ago, we did a challenge on Forza 6 where we took some Hennessy Venoms and went racing with them with the full power handicap, which meant the cars had about 200 horsepower. It was surprisingly an awful lot of fun, a weird experience, but a lot of fun. And I saw a few comments on that video, and a few people when we were in the lobby. I was curious to see what would happen if we did this with a Formula 1 car, which is what we're going to be trying today. Now, you may sit there and think, well, surely this is essentially Formula Ford racing. However, you still got to bear in mind that while the car is reduced in power, these F1 cars are getting 230 horsepower, all of the rest of it is still the same as a Formula 1 car, so the downforce, the tyres, the brakes, the suspension, so it's got all of the grip of a Formula 1 car, which is immense, just with slightly less speed and acceleration. It makes for an interesting prospect to go racing. I was hoping for some really close racing with these cars, because they are pretty easy to drive, and can carry a lot of corner speed. Now, one thing that is important to note, you will see a couple of cars stalled on the line in this first race. You cannot run manual and clutch with these. It will not work. The car will not get off the line. So, yeah, a couple of people forgot to change their assist. You cannot launch them with manual and clutch. As we come up towards turn 1, the car that we are following tries to go around the outside, and as the Jaguar and a black Formula 1 car kind of get tangled together a little bit, he manages to pop out to the other side in the lead. One thing that did surprise, it caught a few people out, as you can see on this opening lap, is that while these cars do have a phenomenal amount of grip, there is still a slight bit of oversteer. It's kind of just like a balance thing with the car. You hit a curb a little bit wrong, it can chuck the car sideways and so on. You just had to be a little bit careful with these. You could upset them if you tried to ask a little bit too much. As the race started to gradually settle down, we did see a couple of lag outs, and a few cars would go round and spin themselves out. It became it's a rather weird experience to try and get the hang of these vehicles. You see the McLaren-looking one here, where it's sweeping around the outside of the hairpin because it was just simply a lot braver with these cars. You can carry absurd amounts of corner speed, like absolutely stupid amounts of corner speed. And in the first laps, it was, kind of a learning process, trying to get the hang of just how much you could push these cars, and the answer is a lot. You could brake very, very late on the corners and carry a lot of corner speed. Your brain just doesn't quite expect it. From the cars I was in a mid-pack battle, going to try and make it 3 wide around the final corner. We do brush wheels ever so slightly through there. I had to have a lift in the end when I realised it wasn't going to work. I was happy to kind of sit behind them though, because having these cars with the low power, the slipstream is very, very effective with these, so I wasn't too fussed about following them. They both go sort of towards the inside, are fighting amongst themselves. I'll try to go around the outside, but ran it a little too deep, didn't quite have the grip to do that. I think the Lotus car got on the curb, got it sideways, so I will take that position from him. He's fighting back though, trying to go to the outside at the top of the hill. Then we go too wide around there, and still he fights, but a wheel on the curb again sees him out wide. I think it's a Manor that came past to move up and follow me through the field. It was a slightly bizarre experience. It's not that the cars handle well, because you expect a Formula 1 car to handle well. It's just the fact that you didn't really brake for very long in these cars, because they were never getting up to the same ridiculous speeds that we're seeing that you'd expect a Formula 1 car to get to. You didn't have to brake for very long at all for the corners. A lot of these corners would be flat out that aren't normally. I mean, that's around the outside. That's an impressive overtake around the outside of that particular turn. A lot of corners were flat out, or just a tiny lift that perhaps wouldn't normally be. As I said, slipstream effect is very, very, very useful with cars like these. Very evident in this one. As we rounded the final corner, the 2 vehicles behind me were fighting, but he could sit in the slipstream. He has a big dive up the inside, while the car we're following is happy to go around the outside. The Lotus couldn't quite make it stick. He put a wheel on the curb, and that tipped his car around sideways. Curbs were vicious with these cars. If you got things a little bit wrong, and the vehicle we're following would keep that position, and he would go on to kind of sit behind my car. It was a weird experience. Yeah, that's the easiest way to sum these vehicles up at the front, and it's a pretty good battle actually. This raged on for most of the race. In the final lap, though, where things got really close between these two cars, running down towards turn 1. The black Formula 1 car goes to the inside here, but you can carry a lot of speed, you can carry a lot of momentum through the corners simply because of the grip. So the McLaren on the outside can hold the position, but again, still the second place car is looking, he goes for the outside, really the fastest corner at the top of the hill, just the tiniest of touches between the two of them, a little bit of laggy, jumpy cars, and one of the McLaren gets tipped sideways, so the car waits for him to catch up and gets a little hurry-up bump. But yeah, you could get some really, really very, very close racing with these vehicles. In these configurations, we get a really big slide trying to get on the pad. I was actually surprised to see that car sort of spin its wheels up in the manner that it did there. The McLaren's looking around the outside. We've seen it done, but he can't quite carry enough speed. A lot of this was about being confident and learning quickly where you could be confident with the vehicle. As we run through this final chicane, the McLaren little too far back to challenge. Also a very, very tough place to get overtakes done. Yeah, you'll have phenomenal brakes and grip and so on in these cars, but yeah, you can't really have a dive into that chicane. It's just a little bit too narrow through there. As second race, we would go to Laguna Seca, a track that I would say would be quite interesting with these vehicles. Quite a lot of medium speed corners around here, and seeing as these are relatively slow comparatively sort of top speed wise, it was likely to be a almost not quite flat out circuit, but a lot of very, very high speed, very little braking required around here. Things would go a little bit wrong into turn 1. Too many cars trying to fit into the same piece of tarmac doesn't work, as yeah, cars get a little bit bumped and boxed around. It was much like when we saw it with the Hennessy's. Trying to judge that braking into the first corner was quite difficult with these, because you know the brakes are going to be phenomenal, but you know you still do need some time to get the vehicles slowed down. So yeah, with a huge pack of cars all filing into that corner, it was a little bit of chaos. It's 3 wide down this back straight. Car we're following is out the inside as a couple of cars just run a little bit wide. I think someone got a weird on the sand, and got themselves turned around. Is a blue Formula 1 car absolutely flying up the hill, sweeps around the outside to get the position, and now the car we're following heavily under attack again. And this is a similar story with any of the low horsepower stuff that we've done. Momentum, very, very important with these vehicles. It was more important here than at Catalonia. I mean, it certainly was important at Catalonia, but here with a lot of the medium speed corners, keeping that momentum up was very, very important. If you got overtaken, if you got put out of position, it was very easy to lose multiple positions. Or if you weren't quite brave enough through a corner, it was very easy for the cars behind to find a way through. So yeah, you did really need to keep the momentum up. I had a big dive at the final corner, and the problem with trying to get these overtakes done, you see here I had to take a tight line to get that dive to work, and then it makes me really, really slow off the corner. The car on the outside can kind of keep his speed up a little bit more, and he's got it back alongside as we run down towards turn 1. Admittedly, I am in the position that you want to be. The blue car tries his best to go around the outside, but it's not quite going to work at that point. So yeah, kind of having a big dive at the inside of somebody was quite difficult to actually make it successfully stick, because you've got to make sure that you don't kill too much of your momentum trying to get a move done. Racing here was a bit better. We had a fair few less spinners in this one as people had sort of got to grips with the cars. We did still see a few times people kind of turning into corners too early and running across the sand and running across the curbs and so on. Very easy mistake to make with these cars when there is so much grip and a slight lack of speed in them. Vehicle we're following, the camouflage car, just carried a lot more speed down that back straight and could get to the inside. As I said, some of these medium speed corners were pretty much flat out. There's a battle going on behind, like up here. It was sort of a little bit of a lift perhaps around that kind of corner, which yeah, it was a really interesting experience almost driving these cars. I did not like these as much as the Hennessy's. I did much better with the low-powered Hennessy's. These I wasn't particularly fast at. I have a big moment. This was fighting over third. Huge moment into turn 1. We kind of got across sort of the crest down there, and we sort of bumped a little bit together. I got fired across the sand. I have no idea how I got that car stopped and turned. I felt sure I was going to be a goner. Somehow I managed to make it stick. And what really helped me out is that McLaren was then behind, was under pressure from another vehicle, and that just gave me a little bit of a breather as we came into these closing stages. A few of the vehicles sadly did end up taking a bit of damage on the opening lap, most of it in the first corner, sort of mayhem. They proceeded to have their own little race after going to the pits. That's banging wheels through one of the quickest corners on the track. The Jaguar here not quite managing to make it stick, thought about having a big dive at the corkscrew, and then we get that big sideways moment. If you push the cars just that little bit too hard, yeah, they could slide around, and you see the difference that has made. He's now nowhere near challenging the vehicle ahead just because of that little slide. Unlike race 1, it was not a particularly close fought battle for the lead. His car got to the front and slightly buggered off. In this one, I think there were quite a few cars setting similar lap times, but the field was far too spread out for there to be a real huge contest at the front. I don't even think that car in the background was second place. I think second was a fair bit further back. This is something that we have seen quite a lot more in Forza 6 with much bigger lobbies. If a fast car can get to the front early on, they will sort of vanish away from the rest of the field. Is, just what can happen with random grids. By the end of the race, I was coming under more pressure again. I was struggling getting the most out of these cars. Wasn't my sort of thing. It was good fun to drive. I just couldn't drive them particularly fast. As I said, not my kind of vehicle particularly. And I was having to try and defend. I was determined not to lose my podium position on the final corner. So I go very, very defensive into here. Now you've seen that I'd been slow off this corner before by taking a tight line. So I decided to not really bother going super defensive. I let the other McLaren try to do the cutback on me, but he took that tight line and couldn't get any speed off the corner. It was keeping that momentum up, meant that I could hold on just about to third place. Yeah, I had struggled a bit on that race. Our final one would go to the Road Atlanta full circuit. I actually managed to get my car off the line pretty well in this one. This track, again, another very, very fast circuit. In actual fact, you didn't have to brake for pretty much half the lap. Around here, once you've got the hang, once you've built up the confidence, you didn't actually have to brake for any of this first sector. That's the level of grip that you got with these cars. We were all sort of moving around trying to swap positions at the top of the hill, and again, a few cars would take little trips across the grass. I had a relatively decent starting position, and there was a manor behind me trying to look for a way past, which is a strange sentence to say, I will admit. A car ahead of me got across the rumble strips. He went sideways. I would make the most of that, getting my vehicle past. This is the first time you have to brake on the lap around Road Atlanta, is into that corner. Once you've got the hang of the cars and the tyres are up to temperature, that would be the first time that you'd actually need to brake. But it did take us a while to get the confidence to drive the cars like that. The car I'm racing here found a way back past with me running a little wide, but now we're sat in the slipstream. And as much as I'd like this circuit, with these cars, there is only really 2 overtaking opportunities on this track. The one that I said before, the first place you brake in this is the next one, the next best overtaking opportunity. I tried to go around the outside into the shame. The 2 cars behind were having a little fight of their own, and neither of them swapped positions, and then we're back to being flat out as we go down the hill. So yeah, this track, these cars were actually so quick that it wasn't quite as much overtaking opportunities as I had perhaps expected. You could potentially have an overtake here, but it was such a tiny braking zone that it was never really likely to happen. Your best bet was just get neatly out of the corner and slipstream your way down this really long straight, because with such a long straight, that slipstream effect could be very, very powerful in vehicles like these. But of course, the second the McLaren here has jumped out of the slipstream, I think he went on the grass ever so slightly. That killed any of his overspeed that he had, and now he's stuck just going side by side as we're all busy tussling up at the front. I was having a look at getting past somebody. The McLaren here swooped around the outside, did a really good job of making that outside pass stick at the chicane. And the white cars got compromised. He got slow off the corner, and this is what we saw from Laguna Seca. You get slow off one corner, and now you're suddenly in a world of trouble. You've lost that little bit of momentum. Now the Jaguar here is having a look, going to have a go up the inside into turn 1. You can't quite go flat out through turn 1 if you're too wide, and the white car had to have that lift, got stuck on the outside, and again, lost that momentum. The purple car's gone through. The purple car's now buggered off to go and fight the Jaguar. It's just, if you get out of position and there's a couple of vehicles behind you, you're in an awful lot of trouble. So yeah, that was something to be certainly to be very, very aware of. This was the battle for the lead going on. Unlike at Laguna, nobody buggered off at the front of this one. Currently a 4-car battle almost for the lead going on, which is always good. You always want to see a 4-car battle. Again, it was pretty much a slipstream train to get past down this straight because you really didn't brake at the earlier parts in the lap. I found myself racing with the same McLaren. Again, this time out, we come down towards the chicane. Both of the groups are going too wide. This one, second place, tried to go around the outside, couldn't make it work. Fourth place, though, went around the outside of me, again making that outside manoeuvre work at the chicane, which is a tough way to do things. But yeah, he was getting passes done there really rather well. As I say again, I wasn't massively quick with these cars around here. I did a bit better at Road Atlanta than I did at Laguna. I really didn't fare very well at Laguna. But yeah, I couldn't really get the most out of these vehicles. Further back, and again you can see there were still some decent sized groups. I'd hoped that running these as you know, much lower powered vehicles, ignore the slight lagged out cars that are dotted around. This is again a pretty brave manoeuvre going around the outside at the top of here, because it is a braking zone. It's still not a very big one through there. I had hoped that perhaps the field would be a little bit more bunched up. I love how there's just a car skates off the track. I hoped it had been a little bit more bunched up with the vehicles here being low powered. I mean, if you race normal Formula 1 cars, often the field's very, very spread out. We've raced these cars normally, sorry. The field gets very, very spread out. I'd hoped running these in the low power configuration. It was better. There was still a fair bit of close racing, but there was still some fairly large gaps through the field. This black car was making good progress through the order, tried to get to the inside of the chicane. Purple car defended the first part but just ran wide on the exit, and again bouncing across the grass ever so slightly, lost that momentum and would promptly lose the position, and that makes you slow down the next corner, and then you're going to have a really tough time sort of trying to fight your way back at the front. And there was still this battle raging over the lead as we run down this back straight, absolutely side by side. This time the McLaren going to the inside at this corner. It fared so well trying to go around the outside. This time he's having to go at the inside, and the blue car does the same thing back to him, holds it around the outside. They're still though side by side as they run up the hill. This final corner, it is absolutely flat out in these cars, no problems, and they do it absolutely side by side. This, you know, they started getting on for half a lap now. These cars have been going side by side up towards turn one. Again, another flat out corner. Both of them make it through without any troubles. Through turn one, still neck and neck. Unfortunately, it would all go wrong at the top of the hill. Blue car bounces it across the curb and loses it on the high curbing here, going too wide, flat out up there. Sadly, didn't quite work for these guys. That would put both of them out of the race, which would allow this black car up into second, and he was catching on the leader fast. I'd made a couple of silly mistakes and spun, which had dropped me back through the field. I preferred Road Atlanta, but yeah, I'd made a silly mistake on a curb. So ended up pointing backwards with a really quick run through this first section. He could simply out-drag the car down that back straight. That's impressive to have carried that much more speed to get past before you ever got to the corner. Blue car not giving up, fighting back on the inside there, but yeah, just lost that momentum trying to get onto the straight, trying to get up the inside, and was just that too far back. You know, yeah, you can pick up the slipstream a little bit, but it was too far back to do anything. So top three was all change on the final lap. A little bit of a shame with the two leaders coming together at the top of the hill, but that is the risk that you run when trying to go flat out up there with these cars. It was a strange thing, much like I said with the Venoms. This was a very weird thing to kind of get your head around to start with, because the grip is phenomenal, and you could take corners at silly amounts of speed, almost. It felt like silly amounts of speed because you didn't have to brake very much for any of the corners. So yeah, a rather weird experience. Quite a lot of close racing. Wasn't quite as close as I had perhaps expected, but there certainly were some good fun battle with these. And as I said, it's just a kind of a weird experience driving these cars in this manner. If you do want to try it, make sure you don't run manual and clutch. It simply won't work because of the turbos don't kick in at the low enough revs, and with the power all tweaked and stuff, the cars simply won't get off the line. So yeah, make sure you stick them in manual before you have a go. But I do recommend you give it a try, as there can be an awful lot of fun to be had with these cars. You probably need a tighter, twistier circuit really to make the most of them. Some of these faster circuits, it can just get to sort of almost flat out the entire way. You could probably get around like the Alps without actually having to brake at all with these cars. So yeah, it's interesting. As I said, a slightly odd, slightly different experience, and you can still have plenty of close battling with equally skilled drivers. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, And until next time, goodbye.